Welcome. Thank you for coming out and making our youth a priority. Tonight we're going to look at some things that influence youth substance use, and then we're going to review some current data and look at some things that are currently happening in prevention, and then kind of identify something that each of us can do in our own life in our community. So thank you. Healthy Lamoille Valley is a community coalition of organizations and individuals working collaboratively to encourage youth to make healthy, substance-free decisions. The work of our coalition has been going on for about 20 years under different names. It began in 1998, and we're happy to be continuing that work. So that's a little bit about us, and we'd love to know a little bit about you. So we'll start here with Michelle, and if you could share your name and the community that you live, work, or go to school in, that would be great.
Okay, I'm Michelle Salvador. I work at the Department of Health doing substance abuse prevention work in this community for 20 years now. I live in Worcester, Vermont, right down past Elmore, and yeah, that's it. Cool.
Hi, I'm Dave Iacoboni. I live in Morrisville. I'm a state representative for Elmore, Morrisville, Worcester, and Woodbury. And I lived in the community approaching 60 years, and the good thing is I keep learning something all the time about the community.
Hi, I'm Peter Hathaway. I'm a student assistance counselor at People's Academy Middle School and High School.
My name is Betsy Rich. I'm a parent and an educator. I live in Morrisville.
I'm Suzanne Maslin. I'm the district director at the Department of Health. I'm on the HLV steering team, and happy to be here tonight.
Hi, I'm Deb Shepke. I'm the mother of 3 teenagers, and I've been involved in our community awareness and parent education workshops in the Stowe community.
I'm Greg Tatro, a business owner, parent of an addicted daughter. So I'm here to learn and see what we can figure out.
I'm Jeff Hunsberger. I'm with the Lamoille Family Center. I'm the Youth and Young Adults Program Manager, the Runaway and Homeless Youth Program, the LINK program, and oversee the Reach Out program. I'm also a Lamoille North Supervisory Union School Board member and a member of the Promise community out of Eden. I live in Eden. I've been up there since about 2004.
I'm Ben Loesch. I work at Northern Vermont University as a staff therapist for the college, and I also work with Jessica on preventative pilot program for grant words, and and I don't live anywhere around here, but I love kids, so.
Hi, I'm Floyd Neese. I'm the executive director of the Lamoille Family Center. 2 adult children graduated from Lamoille Union High School. And I'm also on the steering committee for both of them.
I'm Stephanie Casey. I live in Morrisville. I have adult children and grandchildren in this community, and I work at North Central Vermont Recovery Center. I'm on the board of Community Health Services of Lamoille Valley, and I'm glad you guys are doing this. Here to learn.
I'm Roger Markham, Lamoille County Sheriff, and I've been trying the last few years to get more involved in this kind of issues surrounding our society, and I think if we can prevent a lot of these situations from occurring at a very young age, I think that I, as a law enforcement officer, have done my job.
I'm Matt Kinney. I live in Johnson, and where I'm a select board member.
Hi, Betsy Anderson. I live here in the county. I am an attorney and have done a lot of drug prosecutions through my career, so I'm excited to sort of get this viewpoint as Also, I'm running for state's attorney here in Lamoille County.
Hi, I'm Allison Link, and I am a partner in this all with Jessica and Ann, and we at Health in Lamoille Valley, as you know, you'll hear more about what we do, but specifically my work is in policy and community outreach. And I live in Morrisville with my family and active in other places around the Lamoille Valley. Happy also to see everybody here.
Katie Marvin. I'm a parent of 3 girls. I have kids in both schools. I coach here, actually, and I'm a family doctor down in Stowe, and I have a fairly large medication-assisted treatment panel, and I've learned a lot from these. I've learned a lot from these types of events, from all of the different groups that are necessary for partnerships with every different angle of this, from treatment and recovery of addiction. We're doing it for our patients and selfishly for my kids.
And Daniel Franklin, I'm the Assistant Director of our Central Vermont Recovery Center. Thrilled to be here and get to meet some new faces and see lots of friends. So, thank you.
Back there at the back table is Em. She's our communications assistant, and she lives in Craftsbury. And I'm Jessica, and I live in Johnson, and I have 2 kids, 10 and 12. So part of the reason that we took the time to do this is relationship is one of the foundational points of substance prevention. It's through relationships that we can build on with our youth to prevent substance misuse, but also to provide them with the supports that they need. So we're going to do a short icebreaker. Each of you has an index card and a pen. I'd like you to take the index card, and I'd like you to fold it in half, and then fold it in half again, and then open it. And then label it 1 through 8, 4 on one side, each quadrant, and then 4 on the other. You actually each have a cheat sheet on your table. It's the orange paper that's folded up. And then as a table, you can kind of work through the different pieces. So number 1 is write down your favorite season. Season, yes. Spring, summer, winter, fall. And then number 2, and these again are on your table. Number 2 is if you have any pets. 3 is a place that you might like to travel. 4 is sports or instruments that you've played, and if you haven't done a sport or instrument, maybe a club that you might have been involved in school or are currently involved in school. And then on the back side, 5 would be your favorite ice cream flavor. 6 is movies or books. Which do you prefer? 7 is favorite type of music. And 8 is favorite place in the Lamoille Valley. Yep. Okay, so I'm going to invite you all to stand up. This is a get to know each other activity. Most of you got to know names. So you're going to walk around. It's like human bingo. You're going to walk around and find somebody that has, likes the same ice cream flavor as you, and then you just initial each other's square. You can only have one person initial one square, so you have to move around and find out about the people in the room a little bit. So. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. So was that easy or hard to find out things about your neighbors and people in the room? Easy? Fun? So hearing that this was kind of easy or fun to find out about people? These are simple topics that you can have a conversation with anybody about. So it's about finding commonalities. So when you meet it's the same with our kids. When you meet our kids, whether it's a neighbor or somebody in your soccer team or wherever you are, it's about finding those commonalities. And sometimes they don't always present that they want to talk about them, but it's finding those things that you can, oh, you have pets? I have pets. Do you have a picture of your pet? So it's all of these simple subjects could go into a deeper, longer conversation, which I saw happening around the room. Each of you, dug deeper around some of those things. So I'm going to turn it over to Michelle. She has the next piece of our presentation. Thank you.
Okay, so I want to tell you a story tonight, all right? So back in 2008, I gave birth to my son, who I affectionately refer to as the boy. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the boy. Some of you know him from seeing him all over Facebook and everything, and others of you don't, except for my bragging. So, current research indicates that our earliest life memories occur when we are about 3 and 3.5 years old. Mine was at 3. I was in England with my parents, and we were waiting to get onto a hovercraft, and we were in this postcard shop, and the postcard shop's owner came out from behind the postcard rack and stuck his tongue out at me. And that is my earliest life memory. So some of you recognize this place here. It's our municipal offices in Morristown. And my son attended childcare here in town, so I'd drop him off every morning. And at 3 years old, one day after, when we were on the way home, we passed by this spot of town. And he noticed an older woman sitting there, and she was smoking. And he said, Mom, he said, when I'm an old lady, I'm going to smoke cigarettes. And so I used this, swear to God, so I used this teachable moment to talk to him about, oh, God, no, why would you do that? Tell him about, how terrible cigarettes were for his health. And, that was one of my earliest memories of when he began to take note of the top 3 substances of abuse in Vermont, which are alcohol and marijuana and nicotine products. So at 4 years old, we hooked up with my parents on a camping trip. Do never tell my mom I told you this story. And we were sitting down in the evening, we were having some appetizers, and my folks were having a glass of wine, and my mom offered my son his own special cocktail, called it a cocktail, a Shirley Temple, and even proceeded to try to give it to him in a wine glass, which I obviously intervened. God, no, Mom. He began skiing at 2 years old, a really, a healthy, great, healthy Vermont activity. And one Saturday when he was 5 years old, we went to our ski mountain, and we were greeted at the mountain by a skier who was dressed up as the character Sam Adams from Sam Adams Beer. And so he gave us this fake ski pass to put on our coats, and he said, if you ski all over the mountain and you find all the other Sam Adams skiing at the mountain and you get your pass punched, then you can come on upstairs to the lodge later and you can get some really great prizes. So that day, in addition to Sam Adams being all over the mountain while we were skiing, we got one of these maps, which had, it's not really a map of our ski area. All the ski trails are named after different Sam Adams beers. They gave us this great Sam Adams lip balm, in case we got chapped out there skiing. A thing to keep our skis together when we're carting them back to our car. And the Sam Adams hat so that we could take pride in our beer. And a thermometer. I don't know what happened to that. But anyhow, and then later you could go up to the tavern and you could sample some Sam Adams beer and they would take your picture and put it on the website. But the whole day was just saturated, oversaturation with beer messages. So by 6 years old, this boy, he's got an ear for music, right? So when he was 2, he would hear a commercial come on the TV and he would stop and he would turn and he'd tune in on it. By 6, he was singing all of the television commercials. He would only have to hear it once. So I noticed alcohol commercials that he would be humming and singing, Subaru commercials, right, the Vermont state car, and prescription drug commercials. They were kind of a favorite of his. Well, by 7, candy was his main food group, of course. He is my son. And these were some of his favorites. He'd come across some of the old candy cigarettes, which were so cool to look like you were smoking. Come on, admit it, you did it when you were little. And Big League Chew, which is still for sale down at our village market, and one of his favorite gums to buy if he didn't currently have braces. So 8 years old, we would always head down, ever since he was little actually, to the farmer's market in Montpelier. And by 8 years old, he found this really great soda that he liked. And I thought, man, this kid just loves maple soda, until the one day he was done with it. And I was like, you know, here's the recycled container. Let's get rid of the bottle. And he said, oh no, Mama, I look cool with this because it looks like I'm drinking a beer. And somebody asked me today, well, where did he ever get that message from? I don't know. I don't know. Just living in our culture, you know? So at 9 years old, I volunteered to go in and to read a story to his class. And I noticed one of his peers was wearing this t-shirt to school. It's a Jameson Whiskey's t-shirt. So again, more messages. Look how freaking cute he is, right? So in addition to being this incredible skier, he plays basketball and soccer and baseball. And so at 10 years old, he was on a baseball team, and he made the all-star team. And some of the parents, very well-intentioned, good people, sent around an email at the end of the season. They said they wanted to buy a gift for the kids to give to the coaches. And they had purchased and had beer mugs engraved with the coach's name on it for the children to give to the coaches. And another parent replied to the email saying that was a really great idea and that she would purchase the special beverages to go along. So I respectfully reminded them that children can't have alcohol and can't give it to adults, and I would prefer that they gave something else to the coaches. And it went over like a lead weight, needless to say. Okay, in comes July, right? He's 10 years old. Marijuana has been legalized, and we're walking back to our car after our town's 4th of July festivities. And this is the little Methodist church in my town of Worcester. And there was a man set up on the front lawn of the church, and he was selling marijuana plants, a whole table full. Yes. And then we went to our first farmer's market of July, and there's a picnic table where we sit and we drink our maple sodas and we eat our pizza, and there were these free cannabis plants out, and you'll notice there's a child sitting there at the table right by these free plants. So one of the two most misused substances among youth and adults in Vermont, marijuana, you know, it's legal now for adults to consume, but we really need to be paying attention that the messaging around it is really starting to grab and be accessible to our young people whose, you know, brains are still developing. So later that day, hopped onto Facebook, and this popped up in my Facebook feed, okay? This was from Montpelier Alive Facebook page, and it was captioned only in Montpelier. And it had 305 likes about within the first hour that it was posted. And it had 145 shares, and it was mostly hearts and laughing emojis. Everybody thought this was, you know, the best thing. So this kind of messaging, right, and access and availability of substances for young people in our communities, and the way that use of these substances is really normed in our communities, they are all risk factors for our young people. And they have a significant impact on the age that young people first start to use substances. And the science tells us, and I think this is probably the most important thing, the science tells us that young people that use substances before the age of 15 are 6 times more likely to develop substance use dependency in their life than those that start using at the age of 21 or later. That's why we have the age of 21 as the law. And honestly, I would challenge you to, substance use impacts all of us, and talk to anyone, you know, a friend, a family member, a relative, when they first began using substances, and I will just about guarantee you that most people started using before the age of 15. It's like the most significant risk factor in young people's lives. And we're actually going to be examining some of that data tonight about what does that risk factor look like in our community. So later in July, was Youth Day at the farmers market. So I'm like, cool, a time to go to our farmers market and our young people in our community peddling their wares. And yep, again, only this time it was all gone by the time we got there. And it's not just my son experiencing this messaging and the access to substances of misuse. A peer of mine the other day, when I was telling him about our meeting tonight, he even sent me this along. This was from the Basin Harbor Club, the Teen Escape Program, giving you the opportunity to have fun without your siblings and parents and go kayaking with other teens, play capture the flag, lake cruises, low ropes course, et cetera, mocktail hour, dance parties, and lots more. So in and of themselves, these messages don't necessarily seem like that big of a deal, but the accumulation of this positive messaging around substances in our young people's lives has a pretty significant impact on them. So despite our varying opinion and beliefs about these most prevalent drugs, substances of misuse, there is one thing that I would be willing to say that we all have in common, and that we would like our youth to grow up in our communities and have healthy opportunities and grow up in the healthiest environment possible. I think that's one place that we can all come together on. So risk factors are characteristics at the biological, psychological, family, community, and cultural level, and they are things that are associated with a high likelihood of negative outcomes. So the more risk factors a young person has, the more at risk they are for substance misuse. And alternatively, protective factors are characteristics associated with a lower likelihood of negative outcomes. And they reduce the risk factors' impact, and they can be seen as like positive and countering to risk messages. So what I'm going to pass out, Jess, you want to help, is there are like so many risk factors and so many protective factors in our communities, but these, albeit an old list, this was a study that taught us what were the risk factors and protective factors that had the highest correlation to substance misuse, okay? So I want you to take a look. At the top is the risk factors, the bottom the protective factors, and at your table, take a minute and reflect on the story of the boy and circle what were the risk factors that you heard me talk about that he's faced in his life, and what were maybe some of the protective factors that you heard. What are your questions? Okay. So, what do you think? What were some of the risk factors you heard in the story?
Community laws and norms.
Community laws and norms. Okay.
Yep, and the first one, alcohol and drugs readily available.
Readily available.
Yep.
Yep. Anything else?
I thought it was cool. Beer.
Yes.
Peer individual.
Yeah, thought it was cool.
Yep.
young person begins using maple soda at a young age.
Imagine if somebody bought that kid his whiskey shirt, like that wasn't, didn't buy that himself.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Or family trip. We can consider that the kid wound up with that shirt somehow, and is wearing the shirt. We're not sure.
It was a youth shirt. Yeah. So what were some of the protective factors that you heard about the boy?
His mother.
All of them.
He set it up that way.
He plays sports.
He plays sports. Yeah. Talking with them about, using teachable moments.
Yeah, he was pretty engaged in the community.
Yes. Yeah. Right. Engaged in the community.
The involvement that he has with you as a parent in going to the farmer's market,
Yeah.
going to his games, being active in his life.
Time together. Time with a parent. Yeah. Great.
Well, I think one thing that I just thought of is, we think about the presence of all these things, and so the understanding from, I think, the perspective of a kid or a teen is that everybody is doing it. There's an assumption.
Yes.
And we don't actually ever, or rarely, say, well, that person actually doesn't smoke, and that person doesn't drink, and that person doesn't drink, and that person doesn't smoke. There would be no way that they would know. I think the assumption is that they do.
Right.
So it's like, who's out there saying, like I rarely would say to somebody like, what?
60%, 70% aren't doing this behavior, or, yeah. That's a good point. That's a good point. We're pointing out when someone's not doing something, but we're not necessarily pointing out, healthier things. Well, many factors influence people's chance of developing substance use disorder, and effective prevention focuses on reducing those risk factors and increasing protective factors. And so assessing risk and protective factors in our community that contribute to substance use disorders is what helps us actually select appropriate interventions. So a lot of people want, what is the one thing that's going to work, right, for substance abuse prevention? Well, there is no one thing. There is no silver bullet. It's really about comprehensive approaches. So looking at all the risk factors and doing as much decreasing of risk factors and increasing of protective factors as we can do. So how do we know here in Lamoille what our risk factors are? And for that, I'm going to turn it over to Jessica.
So we have this survey. It's called the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, and it's actually administered across the country. And it's administered here through the schools, primarily because that's where our students are gathered. And it's administered every 2 years, from 6th grade up through 12th grade. And so we have packets for you that Allison and Em are going to hand out. And this is some of the data that's related specifically to substance prevention and some of the protective factors. So we really want to encourage you to read through it. So take about 5 minutes to read through it. And then we want to have you at your tables discuss what stood out. Like, what are you seeing in this data? Because we can tell you what we see, but it's really getting you guys to see this is really neat to have everyone looking at the data themselves. So this data is Lamoille County data. It's also available on the Vermont Department of Health website for school districts, and we have the state data. So this particular data, if it's doesn't list the state, it means that Lamoille County is, statistically equivalent with the state. Where you see the state and the county listed, that's where there's a statistical difference. So, and give a shout if
significantly worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just what strikes you about this data?
So when you're ready, go ahead and start discussing at the group what stood out, and then we're going to ask your table to report back out. So if you'd like to appoint a scribe to share back out with the group.
How many people was this?
908. 908. So right. I mean, so I think that what we know is that when use rates go down, parents disapproving or young people thinking their parents disapprove goes up. Okay? And when use rates go up, parental disapproval goes down. There's a direct correlation.
So I think where my brain freezes about all this
Yeah.
is like the 1950s. Disapproval was high on so many things, and there was just a giant rebellion. So I have a hard time equating parental disapproval with working with kids.
No, it actually is one of the number one risk factors. One of the number one reasons that young people choose not to use is because their parents would be disappointed in them or give them strong, consistent messaging around non-use. Yeah. You know, and there's also, I mean, there's a lot of like, there's a lot of myths and things that we believe from the past, you know what I mean, that aren't necessarily true, that are just things that are repeated over time, that like we hear like, oh, you know, use rates, there isn't this drinking age in Europe and everybody drinks early and things is so much better there. No, it's worse. Oh yes, the rate. Now things like driving under the influence aren't as high because there's such more public transportation. Nobody's out driving around. But liver diseases, very young, people getting liver diseases, very young, very high. Like the rates of misuse are much higher than the United States. So, you know, we have a lot of misperceptions.
Right, and I do think that there's some, I mean, at least in studies, certainly you have 8th grade, 13.
Almost waiting for, okay, carry on without you, okay. So this question, the table had a question, and this is, you know, of those that drank alcohol, the early onset on page 1, it's 20% of all 9th through 12th graders that drank alcohol. Or were there other questions that came up at your table about the data that you want to get answers to before we go into observations?
I shared with our table, but I think the tobacco pieces of the data are misleading a bit with what's the reality happening. So to consider that the question, this happened in this was
We talked about that.
2017. I don't know if other folks, the data was collected more than a year ago, and it talks about the past 30 days, which that piece is there, but not how many students at that point had tried e-cigarettes. And then we know also that the question on tobacco, many students may not have checked that or thought that relates to them because they don't consider themselves e-cigarette users. They are jewelers. They use the jewel product. So the questioning also is shifting because of not knowing what the variable really is.
Well, the tobacco is just about tobacco. It's not about jeweling. Right, jeweling would have fallen under vaping or,
right.
Yeah.
The tobacco
Yes.
is about traditional cigarettes.
Yes.
I think that we have to remember that.
And
it's not
chew.
Tobacco's like not, when I look through this in our tobacco prevention work, I see, oh, wow, it appears as if we're doing so great on tobacco, but with other nicotine delivery systems and jeweling,
Right.
maybe we're really in a crisis as folks know. So just to remember that as we're looking at it.
The point I made, though, I really believe, and that is the story of tobacco going from general approval to 90% disapproval.
Yes.
We really have to look at how it got there and apply it to all its others.
Sued the tobacco
Yes.
industry.
I know, money.
Sued the tobacco
Good.
industry.
Good. So while we're at this table, would somebody like to share some of your observations and discussions?
Just
Other than
what data
Allison, 'cause
strikes?
she's gonna share.
One was how across the board in so many categories, cigarettes were always looked at as a lower risk factor or lower compared to alcohol.
Mhm. Yeah.
I'm trying to say that it's less strong, less
Yeah.
Which just speaks to what we were just talking
Yeah.
about.
Right.
There's definitely a larger perception that cigarettes are harmful to us, and the disapproval ratings are much higher in that. So, good. This table over here, an observation that you'd like to share?
One of the things that jumped out to me was that 52% of the students 9 through 12 thought that it was wrong for somebody their age to drink. I mean, they all know it's illegal. They should all say, even if they drink, they should all say, oh, we know it's wrong. But only 52% are saying it's wrong. So then 48% are saying, yeah, it's totally fine. And then also the LGBT community. I just really feel like there is no support for LGBTQ folks at all. I mean, that's really sad how they're feeling in this community.
One thing I think would be, I would love to know if the last 3 questions, especially like 10 or more hours of participating in activities where we're physically active, like my question, those to me seem like targets to hit because they're low and they are things that we could have some control over. But it would be interesting to break it down and find out why. Is it lack of interest? Is it lack of transportation or money or opportunity or lack of support from the family?
Mm-hmm.
Like sort of if that could be broken down, then if that is a protective factor, you know where to put your energy.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Good point.
Any other observations at this table before we move on?
I do have a question about today.
Yep.
So is this combined data from 3 supervisory?
Yes, this is the county level data.
Yeah, grades 9 to 12.
Valley,
Yeah.
So it includes Hazen.
No, not
No,
Hazen. It's
Lamoille County.
People's Academy, Stowe, and Lamoille Union. Yeah, that's a good clarification. So this table over here, any observations or?
I think interestingly, we echoed everything that's been said so far, from Floyd saying, well, you need to replicate this to others, to the 52% means 48% don't appreciate it. Just a couple on the protective. I thought it was significant that 80% said they had an adult to go to, teacher or an adult, and that was, I found confidence in that. I realize that means 1 in 5 don't, but I expected the number to be lower. I was pleased to see that.
Yeah, and that 78% of the students had dinner at home with one of their parents 4 or more days a week. I thought was a really good positive.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
So access and availability, they can get it if they want it. Are there older friends getting these things for them? Is that
And that's broken down. I can show you within the survey. That's broken down. It's gave someone money to buy it for me, got it at home, got it from a store sold to me, which those numbers are a bit lower though.
Those numbers are really low.
The
We
highest
have-
is gave someone money to buy it.
Or took it from a friend or family member.
Yeah, took it. Mhm.
So then it's just as easy, same percent, just as easy to get marijuana as cigarettes, basically.
Yeah.
And that was before it
Sort of easier variants.
Yeah, and that's before it became, adult use marijuana became legalization, so.
I think the one that makes me the saddest is the last one. They're not, they just don't feel like they matter.
Oh, so another table said that too.
And that, I wonder if, honestly, if even the parents might feel the same way, that could be more than just the kids feeling that way.
But conversely, what's a kid know about community, really? What comes first is the family. As a family, they think they matter to their family. Because if there's love there, then you can't help what everybody else thinks about you, but if there's love at the family level, there's participation at the family level. I think that's what's broken in this system, is our family.
Well, and a lot of people, we've done some focus groups around here, and a lot of young people say that they just don't even feel connected in their community. that there's opportunities for them at school, but that there aren't opportunities out in the community. Like this group I talked with at Peoples during a focus group I did, they said, God, it would just be so great to have like kickball, family kickball down at the Oxbow. But really everything for us focuses at school around sports, was their perception. The one thing I just wanted to point out was that since we started doing the survey in 1998, that our use rates for young people for alcohol and marijuana were all going down, okay? And parental disapproval, or their perception of their parents disapproving of them using, when those numbers went down, increased. So more parents disapproved of use. This is the first time since 1998, when we started doing the survey, that use rates, young people's use rates of alcohol and marijuana have now ticked up, and parental disapproval has decreased. So less young people think that their parents think it's wrong or not okay for them to use. So it just goes to show this, that correlation shows how significant parents and the messaging from adults in the community and parents is as to whether young people choose to use or not.
I was just going to say, are parents just not saying it as much anymore? Do they just think we fixed it already?
I think it's a combination of things. I think, you know, I think I can only speak to kind of like my perception, and it'll be anecdotal. But we've had a pretty dramatic increase in Vermont in our culture around our whole, you know, kind of like craft brew and alcohol and promotions and bringing people for festivals and this kind of thing. We also just legalized marijuana. So when these things happen, the perception of harm changes. And with that, and with perception of harm, that's when there is a direct correlation to use rates. And we have those, you know, you can see those over time in the data when different strategies are implemented and the data changes based on the perception. So that's one important thing we know in prevention.
Question to you guys, if you know, how many hours, I don't know if hours is the right question, but education in schools with prevention, how much are kids getting?
Well, I think it's important to remember that prevention is, and I understand you're talking about education, probably about substances, but prevention used to be like a program or education about substances, but prevention now is really about the laws and norms in our communities and positive activities, and all these things we've been talking about is what prevention is now. So education and programming in school is just one piece, but I actually can't, besides our student assistance counselors that we have and some of the
So that's a nice
youth
segue.
programs. Okay.
That's actually a really nice segue.
That is a good segue.
Into some of the prevention activities that are happening in the region. We wanted to share. We have a few of our partners here, and we're going to ask them to kind of stand up and share as well. But the first one I really wanted to touch on was prescription drug safety. You know, we hear a lot about the opiates problems, so people are often asking, what's happening around opiates? We know that opiates are not the substance that most of our youth are struggling with, but we do know that they are a struggle for many in our community. So we have a couple of projects around that, and some of it is just good common sense safety projects. We've been working, and there's now 3 year-round prescription drug take-back boxes in our region. The Lamoille County Sheriff's Department has one, Morristown PD, and Hardwick PD. There's like a mailbox kiosk. You just go, drop any unused medications, no questions asked. Something new this fall is our medical homes, as well as the Vermont Department of Health. They have prescription drug mail-back envelopes. So if there's senior citizens who can't get out to one of those kiosks, somebody can bring them one of those envelopes, and they can put any unused, expired prescription medicines in those, and they just can get mailed back to an approved incineration facility. So they're destroyed environment within an environmentally sound. There's other education. We have these cards that we made up, And these are actually really great. We have one with just some rocks, and then we have one with a shadow of a child. And it's just, they're on your table, so I encourage you to pick one up. And it's just getting a new prescription. Know what to ask your doctor. I think having an informed public around prescription medicines is really important. So that's one of the things that we do. The other card is kind of a teal aqua color with some dandelions on it, is if there are people struggling with opiate addiction or substance use. So there's some numbers there that they can call. The medical assisted treatment team at Cheslov, there's somebody there that they can call who can, tie them into those services. The recovery center, we have 2 folks here here tonight, as well as Michelle at the ADAP. Those are confidential services that people can call and get help. There's also the emergency services on there as well. So those are a great resource. We're also hoping in the next month to get some prescription locked bags. So if somebody is prescribed, high-level painkillers, for example, they can get some of those. So that way they can securely store those medicines in their home. We also have Rob Carey here from the Lamoille Restorative Center. I'm going to ask you to stand up. And Rob runs the Informed Choices program for us. And this happens for 7th and 8th graders in the local schools. So,
yeah. And it kind of speaks kind of directly to your question. So I don't know, let's call it prevention. But the primary purpose of our presentation is to talk to 7th and 8th grade students in Lamoille County about the consequences of underage marijuana use and alcohol use. So it's specific to, in court diversion agencies across the state, there's the Youth Substance Abuse Safety Program, which is basically the system response to underage drinking. So when somebody is caught, this ticket is issued, and there's some choices that a young person has based on that consequence. So we come into schools. The goal is all of the 7th and 8th grade students in People's Academy, Lamoille Union, and Stowe. So they get a good solid hour or more with me every year in 7th and 8th grade. And again, it's basically consequences in the system response to that violation. I think what we find, and this was sort of mentioned, what we find more than anything is the perception of what's legal is often very skewed for 7th and 8th graders. So it's as much about helping to demystify and sort of break through some of those myths around what is legal behavior and what's not, and then sort of helping them to understand that there are consequences to those decisions, legal consequences to those decisions. Ultimately, the way that works is that if somebody is issued one of these violations, they can go through this Youth Substance Abuse Safety Program, which includes a drug and alcohol screening, possible referral to a counselor, or if they decline to participate in that, then they look at what will ultimately be a license suspension and a fine. So we've been doing that now in partnership whenever possible with law enforcement. So the Lamoille County Sheriff's Department has been a wonderful partner at Lamoille Union. And so they help give that presentation with us, and also, whenever possible, an SAP or guidance person or health teacher or whoever's available at the school.
So there's a nice collaboration.
So it's a really great collaboration with partners in the community, and which is a lot of kids.
Good. Yeah, so most of our kids in our region are getting that, and that's that reinforcement of there are strong community norms. We also have, in many of our schools, we have Getting to Why groups, and these are groups that look at this youth risk behavior survey data, and they report it back out to their community. And Mariana, can you say 2 or 3 sentences about that?
So I'm Mariana Donnelly. I am a school social worker, for lack of a better term, but also the SAP and the homeschool coordinator. Social worker is just easier. So I run the prevention at school as one of my gigs, and it is tricky, the education piece for these youth. We do go in and we have wellness classes and we have health classes, and we try to educate the kids on sort of the biochemistry of what's happening to them, but it's so far beyond where they are developmentally. It does not feel effective or appropriate, but we do it because we don't know what else to do. But what does feel really helpful are these groups, and so the Getting to Why groups We run them in the middle school and the high school, and then also we have our tobacco prevention groups that we run in the middle school and the high school. They pour through this data, so they go and they get trained and figure out how to analyze and really understand this. They get their data for their school. The middle school will get their specific, and the high school will get their specific. And they go through it all and invite other students, and they spend an entire day. We probably have between 20 and 30 kids analyzing this, and then sort of voting on what they think is the most problematic and concerning, and then trying to strategize and figure out why are these numbers the way they are, what are we missing in our community, what makes our community strong, what are our protective factors, and what are our risk factors and are potentially affecting this. And then they do community dialogue nights where we invite parents to come out. My group also did another community dialogue night where they had stakeholders and business owners come out. It was awesome, and talk about what we needed to do to come together as a community and sort of combat some of these concerning data points. So.
Thank you. I also wanted to highlight a couple more quick things. One, Roger, can you share a couple of quick moments, like a couple quick sentences about the Lamoille Area Youth Leadership
Really
team?
quick.
And we're running out of time.
Just about out of time.
We want to honor people's times. Now, so share a moment of this collaboration.
Last February, we sent children or kids down between the grades of 7 through seniors from Stowe, Morristown, and Lamoille Union. She sent them down to youth leadership training in Washington, D.C. area. The vision that I have is that kids start talking to other kids at that level. They know what the very latest on social media, they know how to talk to each other, and that they take on a bit of this prevention, education, peer support. And so we're getting ready to meet the first time from the summer tomorrow night. And we've got some really exciting young kids, 7th grade or so, that are going to provide leadership right up through. If I can, I'm going to send another batch down. And that's, I think that's better than having adults talking to you all the time.
Good. And one other program I want to highlight is Northern Vermont University. We're doing a pilot project. Michelle is handing out kind of an overview of some of the projects. There's a lot we didn't get to. I'm realizing that everybody's really passionate about what we're doing, so it's really hard to contain it. But I do want to touch base about what's happening at Northern Vermont University at Johnson. So.
I work in the wellness center as a staff therapist. Oh, stand up. Okay. I work as a staff therapist in the wellness center, which is a free service for any undergrad. And I've been going out as half of my job to try to connect with the kids and demystify coming to get mental health services, and also see it as a resource to just ask some hard-won questions and get an honest adult response back. And through some of that is I have an advice column that's a little cheeky and funny with anonymous questions, and I do a lot of harm reduction programming so that a lot of the kids come to us already with a substance use issue, and we go in not trying to get them to stop completely, but to have a conversation and find out actually what is behind it, what motivates them, and then slowly get them to make the decisions to stop using.
So thank you. And thank you all. So for the last activity, we have about 10 minutes. We just handed out the sheet of some of the projects that are happening in the region, and we also have response cards. So Em and Allison, if you'd hand those out real quick. We'd love to hear, and have you think about what's the next step for you. What did you hear tonight that you're like, oh, I want to take that and do that. I want to go and impact my community, or I'm coaching this team. Maybe I could bring up this information to them, or I can get to know the parents of my kids' friends. So those sort of things. What are those things that you can do? So, and we'd love to have your response card. And the other thing that's on your table is we are grant funded, and we'd like to keep those grants coming, is a data collection form, and it's demographic data. And I know that Katie also had something she wanted to share super fast. So.
Well, it's nothing I mentioned in prevention, but because people might not know about it, but from the physician standpoint, you know, last July, so 14 months ago, there was a law passed that really limited the prescribing practices of every MD and PO and PA in the state. So, I mean, we can lose our licenses if we don't abide by these laws. There are rules on the amount you can prescribe in terms of the number of pills, in terms of the morphine mill equivalent per prescription. There's a contract that's explained and worked out with the patient in writing, and an informational paper from the Department of Health to every single patient. And then there's correct Narcan that's prescribed for every patient that gets a opiate benzo or over 90 milligrams of opiate. So there's a lot that goes into prescribing an opiate these days. And so it takes so much work that I think a lot of providers are like, they don't need it. But more importantly, if patients need it, obviously, like, they might need it, but I think that there's a huge amount of effort going on in the medical community that might not come to things like this regarding alternative treatments for pain, mindfulness, acupuncture, chiropractic, trying to get those things covered by insurances. And also, it has resulted in fewer prescriptions. So the prescription rates are going down, the total number of pills and NMEs is going down. And so, you know, unfortunately that turns many people to heroin, who were relying on the pills. But, you know, we talk to people about that every day. So I think it's good to know that, for example, Copley Hospital, Mansfield Orthopedic, did a lot of big surgeries, and they were very nervous about these changes. They were really nervous. Like, I had to go in there and, like, hold their hand and say, it's going to be okay. Like, and I was, like, the bad guy for a year about this. And they've been really surprised that with fewer folks going home, they are getting involved.
So this is one example where prevention is held at many places. As Michelle said earlier, there's no one silver bullet, but it's all of us have a responsibility in our sphere of work and influence. So
also that we Health in Lamoille Valley, for those who don't know, we do a lot of policy work on the ground in all of the towns, and so that's just important to consider, like around concise in words, around all the norms and the messaging and the norming towards substance. We are trying to work on policy across the board.
So, and that's highlighted in the handout. So take a quick minute, and then you can share out at their table what you might be able to do. So.
So as the District Director of the Department of Health and a member of the steering committee, I've been working hard with Jessica and Michelle to really build our coalition so that when we do apply for the Drug-Free Communities Grant, we have an opportunity to really have a good shot at it. And so my commitment this year is to really to get out there and to recruit more members to our steering committee. Jessica and I have done some good work this summer, sort of laying out a roadmap of how we would do that. So that's sort of my commitment to the process this year. And if you're interested, give us a shot.
Let us know. Would anybody else like to share what they're doing that's supporting prevention? I know Roger already shared a little bit, just before we have to head out. So.
We have to head out.
Yep.
I'll just say really quickly that Catherine Crowley and myself, Catherine Maurer, we're bringing a curriculum to right now the two high schools in the South Supervisory, teaching mindfulness and well-being. It's a really amazing curriculum. And then I think after this year, it could be that it's successful to Lamoille North. So we're really excited by that prevention or that intervention that can engage students to feel their own agency in their choice making.
And the support of the principals.
Yeah.
Which we appreciate.
Yeah. And then my other work is that I'm heading up or helping to build the Lamoille Community House, which is a homeless shelter for Lamoille Valley. So many of you are talked to on the phone. Prevention is there as well.
October 27th.
What?
October 27th is the National Drug Take Back Day.
So, and there'll be some more marketing coming out around that. There's the biannual take back days that are nice reminders. for people. So does anybody else have a pressing, like, I want to share? I'm going to be disappointed if I don't share. Okay. So thank you all for coming tonight. I know it's a lot to come out in the evening, but we really appreciate your time. And feel free to reach out to us at any time with more ideas. We love to collaborate, and many of you are collaborators on various projects. So thank you.